Alright, so today we are finally going to do my long-term review of my Radical Grim Ripper Hardtail. I've had this thing about 15 months, and in that time I've gotten about 315 miles on it, and it's been holding up really well. I really enjoy the bike, and I have to preface this review by saying that this is my first proper hardtail purchase. I bought just the frame and built it up with my parts from my Common Cell Meta that you may have seen on the channel. So it's 27.5-inch tires front and rear, which is kind of outdated at this point, but I've had a lot of fun with it. 140 mil fork up front, and yeah, so this is definitely marketed as a pretty hardcore hardtail. Do I really ride it in that manner? Not really. Sometimes I'll go to more downhill oriented trail systems, but for the most part this is actually my XC bike, which some people might scoff at that. For me, I like it because even though hardtails are inherently pretty pedal efficient, the geometry and burliness of this build lends itself pretty nicely to challenging myself in different ways than I used to on a full suspension trail bike. So that's why I went with this bike. That's why I'm okay with the more aggressive geometry. And I've even raced an XC race back in December, if you saw that, in New Jersey, where there are a ton of rocks, and I had a blast. So just want to keep that in mind as I go into my thoughts about this bike. I don't really ride it as a downhill hardtail, even though it could definitely be ridden like one. For the rest of my setup, I've got a 50 mil stem and 770 bars. I've got the 1-up alloy bars. Like this setup pretty good. With this bike and now my new Nolly Fugitive, I felt like it was time I cut them down to 770 when I have been using 780 most of my riding career. When I first built it up, I had the Marzocchi Bomber Z2 on here, but I really haven't serviced that thing and it really started to act up on me. So I put on my old 35 Gold RL, which is also not that good of a fork. So this bike has kind of not had the best fork experience, and I know that's kind of holding it back in some degree, but really hasn't kept me from having a ton of fun on it. Got Specialized Butcher and Eliminator T7 tires on here. I think these are like 2.35, but I have 40 millimeter Bontrager wheels on this thing, which have really ballooned these tires to be very square in nature. This has been an interesting experience, but I really don't worry about getting pinch flats because the tires are so wide on this thing, and that helps me run pretty low pressures. Usually I stick to like 20 to 22, but if I get down to something lower, I'm really not too concerned. And then I've got TRP Trail Evo brakes on here, which have been working pretty well. I keep having issues with the pads getting contaminated. I don't really know why. That's been an issue on the front brake still to this day, even though I've gotten new pads, new rotors. So that's been a little bit unfortunate. Then moving back here, got my 1-up alloy pedals. These I've been having great success with, really enjoy them. Then a Truvative Descendant crank, 170 millimeter length. Nice Specialized Swatch water bottle. Really enjoy having this on the bike. We definitely want to get another one. And then Ergon SMC4M saddle. This is alright. Not my favorite saddle, not the worst. And then a Fox Transfer dropper post with 170 millimeters of travel, paired with a P&W lever and their P&W grips. Really like that setup. The P&W lever is awesome. And then in the back I've got GX derailleur and XX1 cassette that a friend gave to me. Really matches the color scheme I'm trying to have going on with the blue pedals and the oil slick cassette, and then the purple frame, of course. So a standout feature of this thing is that it has sliding dropouts, so you can adjust the chainstay length. I've kept it in the long position this entire time that I've been riding it. You do have to make sure that this bolt is tight enough, because sometimes these can kind of slide forward, because I don't think this is really what's creating that much pressure against the axle to keep it in place. It's kind of what's holding the derailleur hanger as well. And it didn't come with any chainstay protection, so I put just a little rubber one on here. It's been fine. I don't notice this bike as being particularly loud in any way. Great thing that I love about this thing is it has external cable routing for everything except for the dropper post. Made it really easy to build this thing up. It comes with these plastic clips to hold the cable on, which is fine, but over time I seem to have lost 2. Zip ties would work better, but I do like that you can reuse these, but I guess that's also kind of why they fall out. Luckily, this thing has a perfectly straight seat tube, and that allows you to run any size dropper you can possibly fit on here. Keeping that in mind, this is a size regular, and I'm 5'11", right on the cusp between the regular and the long. The long was really long. The regular is a 455 mil reach, which is actually a little smaller than my common cell Meta. And now my Nolly Fugitive is a 470 mil reach, even though that's a size medium too. So lately I've kind of been sizing down towards the medium, since 5'11" is often on the cusp of the medium and the large. And when I get back on this bike, I usually feel like, dang, this is kind of cramped feeling. But as long as I'm riding it in places that are more twisty or awkward, I actually enjoy the smaller size a lot. And then I'm surprised, even when I get up to speed, that this thing is very capable. Now, the Radical Bicycle Co. is a pretty small British company, and they started making their frames hand-built in the UK, but this one is more mass-produced in Asia, so that's why you could buy it for under $1,000 for just the frame. And now they're actually making an MK2 version of this thing, so I'll show a geometry chart of what the new one is going to look like, because this one I believe is currently sold out. But overall, I think it's a really great value. You know, quite a handful of manufacturers now have sub $1,000 steel frames, but I like this one because it was more relevant to building something up that could be 27.5 inch or 29. And he kind of laid it out there what you needed to build it up as for the geometry to work out well. And it just so happened to line up perfectly with the components that I already had from my common cell when I was deciding to look for a hardtail. So over a year of riding, and the paint has held up decently well. I've got a decent scuff spot where my bike rack strap has met the down tube, but that's kind of to be expected. Overall, it's held up decently well. Like I said, I wish that it came with chainstay protection. That would have been really nice, because something more legit probably would have prevented some of my foot scuffs that have occurred with my shoes. But let's get into some of the ride impressions, because this thing is a ton of fun on trails that I didn't really expect it to be. I've noticed that because I went for the size regular, the chainstay length to reach is a lot more similarly spaced, and that means this thing corners really well and it feels very balanced, especially around smooth but tighter continuous turns. I was going for a ride yesterday where the trails were just covered in pine needles, and I was really focusing on carving a line, and like I could just feel it carving a perfect semicircle, and you kind of feel the rear end like drifting around in the leaves, and it was a lot of fun. And I struggle to get that kind of sensation with my full suspension bikes that are a little bit bigger. So this serves an awesome purpose for practicing my cornering skills, and I'm always pleasantly surprised by how capable the geometry of this thing is. Even when I go up to Westchester, ride at Graham Hills, you know, bombing downhill, doing some kind of free ride stuff at Sprain Ridge. I love playing on rocks with this thing, and I think that's what I really enjoy about it, is the nature of a hardtail feels a lot more precise. And when you're trying to do technical moves, whether they're skinnies or rock rolls, even though it might be a little bit sketchier because you're on a hardtail, I feel like you can do exactly what you want and know that it's going the way you want it, because there's so much feedback. So I enjoy it. We have also had a lot of fun riding at Alpine in New Jersey, which is more downhill oriented, and this thing is a ton of fun. So I really don't have a ton of bad things to say about this thing. I never really thought I would own a hardtail, but after a year of owning this thing, I couldn't imagine not having it in my stable. But if you're watching this video, I'm probably preaching to the choir. You probably know about steel hardtails and how much fun they are. So if you have any questions about the bike and my build, feel free to leave them in the comments, and hopefully you enjoyed watching. And remember, stay adventuring, my friends.